yes, this Washington County Board of County Commissioners now in session pursuant to adjournment. Honorable Chairman Greg Manley presiding, remain standing and come to order.
Thank you, Sheriff. Our first order of business this evening is our prayer, which will be led by Commissioner Carriger, and our pledge led by Commissioner Ford afterwards.
Let us bow our heads. Gracious and loving Heavenly Father,
we come to you tonight asking that you grant us wisdom and strength, and that we follow your admonition that we do unto others as we would have them do unto us. Thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you for allowing us to live in beautiful East Tennessee. All praise and glory go to you. We thank you this day and all the days ahead. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
let's honor America.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, if you'll move us to the roll call screen, please. If you would, go ahead and indicate your presence here this evening. We do have quorum. We have 14 present and 1 absent. Next item is approval of the agenda. I do have one item on the agenda under public hearings. There should be a number D. That should be Resolution 2109-23. It does require a public hearing. If you'll look back, it's a text amendment resolution. That should be on the public hearing. I'll open the floor to entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Carriger, seconded by Commissioner Kate. I would request the amendment. Can you add that, Commissioner?
Yes.
The second as well? All right. 2109-23 will appear under the public hearing as well. All right. Any further questions or discussion? We have a motion and second. All in favor of approving the agenda signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. The motion passes and the agenda is approved. We'll now move into the public comment portion. Each individual should be given 3 minutes to address the board regarding agenda items. Comments shall be limited to items on the meeting agenda this evening. If you are here to speak on a rezoning, that is a separate public hearing, and we will hold that immediately following this public hearing. So if you did sign up to speak on a rezoning, please remember we'll call you after this public hearing. Our first person tonight is Rob Phibbs. Rob, if you'll come forward to the podium, please. Give your name and address to the clerk. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name's Rob Phipps. I am a resident on the Tree Streets of Johnson City. I'm here to talk about 401 Ash Street. It's the historic Ash Street Courthouse. Some of you might know it. It was also a USPS building or the old 911 dispatch. I believe that later in the meeting you'll have the West Walnut Street corridor redevelopment, or sorry, the plan for, either way, there was $5 million allocated by the state for funds for the revitalization that must be used by June. If you do a Freedom of Information request, they have a one-pager on it, but there's not a lot of information about how the $5 million will be used, what it'll be used for, and with only 9 months left and no public plan for the use of funds, I worry that we're going to allow $5 million to go back to the state at the end of the year and not be used for our local citizens in the county and in the city. I understand it must have a civic purpose. There's also the West Walnut Street Corridor redevelopment plan that has $33 million allocated. It'd be great with the other $5 million going to this building to round off at a $38 million investment development in that area. I'm also a member of the Southside Neighborhood Organization, and we've created a Walnut Street Revitalization Task Force to follow up on these issues moving forward. There's plenty of opportunity to work with the voting commission for an office on the second floor, large community space there, could be a potential voting location. It could be an innovation hub. I know multi-million-dollar evaluation tech companies that are developing their products here in Johnson City, but will be moving to larger cities like St. Louis due to their ability to foster the space to make them successful. I would love for this building to be able to help those people. Even if it doesn't go towards technology or other things, there's plenty that this county commission has a chance to be a major contributor in with what the building can become. It needs to be a landmark showing off the power and muscle this group has to revitalize the past to its former beauty, but also to improve the space to serve the future of our county residents. I would love to see a plan by the next month detailing how, working with the city, the $5 million is going to be allocated by the deadline. This will ensure the city and the county have worked together to build a better future for our citizens. I yield my time.
Thank you, Rob. We appreciate you coming this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Matthew Martin. Matthew, if you'll come forward to the podium, please. Give your name and address to the clerk.
Hello, my name is Matthew Martin. I live over on 108 Laws Road. Mr. Kent Harris is my commissioner in our district. I kind of came prepared to sort of express frustration over the Bitcoin facility, but I wanted to change gears and kind of be a bit more positive. I've noticed a lot of delivery on promises made on Red Dog wanting to be a good neighbor. I'm really excited to see the wall being built, what looks like around the whole facility, but I also wanted to kind of temper that with the understanding that I've driven around that facility and met a lot of my new neighbors. I've only lived out there 3 or 4 years, and everybody's really vested in seeing this improve. So we're stoked to see the progress, but we will be continuing to show up and to ask for updates. And I don't know that I can give a specific expectation on what we want to see happen, but progress is all that I want to see at this point, and I think we're getting there. I didn't do a scientific study or anything, but I did notice when you drove by it, if you stopped in front of a barn, it was noticeably quieter, so I'm excited that there's a wall around it, so hopefully that'll help. But it's been awesome to meet my neighbors, and I was a bit cynical about this process when that whole thing was built. But so far, Kent's been super responsive, and I'm really excited to see where this goes. So let's keep at it, I guess, is what I want to say. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Matthew. Paula Treese. Paula, if you'll come forward to the podium, please. Paula, if you'll give your name and address to the clerk.
Paula Treese, 3 Pine Timbers Court, Johnson City. In September of 2019, we sat in this very room and listened to Mayor Vest say he could build the Jonesboro School for $29 million, but he wanted $32.75 million to cover all the costs. Now, 2 years later, the cost is now being raised to $42.75 million, or an extra $10 million. Couple of questions. Has the town of Jonesboro not secured the financing for the school? Because I can remember in October of 2019, there was a huge push to make sure that that agreement went through by the end of the month so that they could, I have to find my right notes, so that they could get the financing by the end of September, the end of October, the end of November, in those 3 months. But now they're coming up and saying we need $10 million more. To me, this seems like a failed thing on the behalf of the city of Jonesboro. I think you all need to look at funding this school ethically by using bonds, sharing the money with Johnson City Schools. If this had been done 2 years ago, the cost probably would have been about the same, and we'd be getting close to opening a Jonesboro school instead of waiting for the ground to even be broken. I think you need to look at this extra $10 million. It's $464,000 a year in a year when we just had some serious issues with funding a budget. I think you need to seriously look at this. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Mayor Vest? If you'll come forward to the podium, please. And you will give your name and address to the clerk.
Okay. Chuck Vest, 110 Carriage Lane, Jonesboro. It's great to be back in front of you, and yes, it's for a reason that we weren't expecting 2 years ago, but there's a lot of things that's happened in between there. I don't think anybody could have predicted what was going to happen in 2020, and I don't think there could have been much done with what happened during 2020. So we worked really hard and really positive early in 2020 redesigning that school to try to be as cost efficient as we could. There was some exciting things happen on the front end with Clark Nexton to downsize the school but make it much more efficient, using the space better. And on the front end, we were saving quite a bit of money. And then, of course, the rails went off the economy. We had a pandemic hit. It kind of slowed down the design process some. But for the most part, we're lucky that we've got Clark Nexton as part of our team, and the Ken Ross architect team. They did an outstanding job, still delivering a great product. Building supplies have skyrocketed the last 12 months for everybody, whether you're building a home, building cars, used cars, everything has gone up, greater than 50%. And really, for this project to come in over, $10 million, did I like that? No. But it's the cost of what something is today. It'll be a greater cost next year. The industry I'm in, we're seeing great inflation of the items we sell. There's supply chain issues, throughout the economy that's going to continue in the next year. So the prices you see now will be greater next year because of those supply chain issues, but also from what our federal government is doing with spending, interest rates will more likely increase next year. And to answer Ms. Teresa's comment there, yes, one of the bright spots of this was, securing a loan through rural development. 2.25% came in lower than what we was expecting. So on the front end, that was a great bright spot, and it will, lead to savings even though you are extending more money out. There got some great things happen. Next year, you'll probably see those interest rates increase. The Fed's already talking about, doing that. So this project is expensive, but it'll be, more expensive in the future. Any other thing we tried to do for Jonesboro schools is going to be very, very expensive, whether it's renovations or anything else. We got a great plan in place that's going to deliver a great product, and this school is going to be around 50 or 60 years, and at the end of the day, it's going to be worth it. So appreciate everything that you all have done. The leadership in the county's been great. The school board's been great, and we're looking forward to this three-way partnership going forward.
Thank you, Mayor. That will conclude our public comment portion. We'll move into our rezoning public hearing at this time. Our first rezoning this evening is the Christopher Lynn Lawson property. It's in the 5th Civil District, R1 Low Density Residential District, requesting to go to the A1 General Agricultural District. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this request? Sir, when you come forward, if you'll give your name and address to the clerk, please.
I'm here to speak on behalf of the license. My name's Mark Helton. I'm not a Washington County native. I'm in Russellville, Tennessee. On behalf of the license, we had gone through Zoning and Planning Commission. It's kind of an oddity. Everything on Patton May Road on the left-hand side is zoned A1. Everything on the right-hand side up to this property is zoned A1. The property behind it is zoned A1. But this property is zoned R1. So, and my customers are wanting to purchase single wide, and there are 17 single wides on Patton May Road. And even zoning couldn't explain how that got zoned R1. So, we appreciate anybody's kindness on helping us get that changed.
Thank you. What was your name again, sir?
Mark Helton.
Mark Helton. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak in favor of the request? Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition to the request? Seeing none, we'll move on to the second one, rezoning, the Buckingham Family Trust and James G. Gresham in the 14th Civil District, A1 General Agricultural District, changing to R1A Low Density Residential District. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the request? Sir, if you'll give your name and address.
My name's Joe McCoy. I live at 499 Tavern Hill Road here in Jonesboro. I'm one of the partners on this Highland Development Group. Excuse me. We're trying to, we are in the process of trying to purchase a farm at the corner of Bob Ford Road and Elmer Walker Road. It's a 100-acre farm. It is serviced at this point in time by sewer and by water. We'd like to go from the A1 zoning to the R1 zoning, not only for, the main reason is to protect the building setbacks for the size houses we want to put in it, and also the rear part of the property is not going to be part of the so-called subdivision. We're going to have 2 or 3 larger tracts encompassing almost all the woods, which would keep the integrity of the whole piece of property at R1, so someone can go back behind us in an A1 zoning and do just like Mr. Helton said before, put single-wide mobile homes in the same, on the same farm. Like I say, it is a 102-acre farm. We've had some questions from the community about the width of Bob Ford Road, which is very narrow. It's our responsibility. I spoke with Mr. Deacons, and we will have to widen the road at our expense. We will have to widen the road for at least a 2-lane road, which at the very end of this road, or the final half of it, is pretty much a 1-lane road. Our hopes is to get 169 lots. Depends on, of course, that depends on a lot. It depends on the economy, rock, all kinds of different stuff. Right now, the property is, of course, it's A1, it's under green belt, the taxes are $1,011 a year. With 169 houses in the medium house range, it's going to bring the same tax base up to $272,600 per year. Now count the trickle-down effect from the tens of millions of dollars that will in 169 lots from your masons, framers, roofers, window, the whole 9 yards. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any. Okay, thank you. I appreciate y'all considering.
Thank you, Joel. Anyone else here to speak in favor of the rezoning? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the rezoning? If you'll come forward to the podium, sir, and give your name and address to the clerk.
Good evening. My name's Greg Tendall. I'm a resident of 181 Timberland Park, just adjacent to the development. During the last meeting, although we're in general support of the development and the resized, rechanging of the lot sizes, there were 2 issues that were brought up. One specifically around the school capacity, and there was a comment made and an acknowledgement by the committee that there would be a follow-up up with some kind of a positive affirmation that this was not going to negatively affect the Ridgeway capacity. I did not see that in the notes, so I'd ask that the notes be amended, or the meeting minutes be amended to reflect that request. We're looking for, some kind of guidance because of the broad development in the gray area, that 5 to 7 years down the road, we're not floating another tax initiative to build yet another school, as we talked about earlier. Secondly was emergency response times. Because of the growth, the area is currently serviced by a volunteer response group. We're concerned with the development, even though the road is going to be increased, about the response time. So traffic congestion obviously is ongoing. I understand there's a study that's being at least done through the county, yet we've not seen any of that. So looking for those, at least those two impact items to be addressed, so that we're all going into this with eyes wide open and very well informed moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak in opposition to the request? Ma'am, if you'll give your name and address to the clerk, please.
My name's Kayla Nichols. I live at 135 Bob Ford Road. I want to speak in opposition of this rezoning because I believe that our region needs to refocus its efforts on land conservation. I brought with me a petition with over 150 signatures from people who also oppose this bid on the same basis. While I and many of my neighbors do strongly oppose the rezoning, I also recognize that for a number of reasons it's likely to be approved. So today I want to ask my commissioners and the developers of the land to take this petition and understand its underlying message. Washington County residents are tired of constantly seeing our beautiful and valuable land developed. Washington County wants to see some kind of plan or effort set aside for permanent land protection. And we want to see the residential developments that do move forward progress with intent and with purpose to be conservation neutral, meaning that they preserve the beauty of the land while still allowing for residential growth. I grew up in this county, I'm invested in it, and I want to see it to continue to grow and have a strong economy. But I believe that that must be balanced with a solid plan to strategically conserve the land, or else this region will lose the very thing that makes it special. Right now, developments are approved left and right, with little to no space set aside for community green spaces or even enough yard space to play a game of wiffle ball. And I have seen no evidence that our Planning Commission has an overall plan for how to structure our region to grow both economically and be preserved for our future generations to enjoy as we have. I ask our commissioners to please consider the environmental and future economic impacts of these endless developments and what they have on our region. I ask the developers to modernize their plans to incorporate more green space into their subdivisions, to not just lessen the impact of the environmental concerns, but to also increase the value of the homes that they build. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kayla. Do you have that petition with you?
I do.
If you'll just bring it to me, and I'll give that to the clerk, and she can make that part of the record. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak in opposition to the request? All right. All right, our final one this evening is a text amendment that we'd added for public hearing. That was resolution number 2109-023, is a resolution amending the Washington County zoning resolution to corridor overlay district. Is there anyone here that would like to speak in favor of the text amendment? Oh, yes, we haven't got to that one, have we? All right, let's just back up and do that one. The Brenda Gale Malone rezoning. It's in the 5th Civil District, B3 General Business to R1 Low Density Residential. Is there anyone here in favor, to speak in favor of the amendment? Ma'am, if you'll give your name and address to the clerk, please.
Brenda Malone, 654 Cherokee Mountain Road, Jonesboro, Tennessee. I'm here to ask for this piece of property to be changed from commercial to residential because I've got somebody that wants to buy it to build a house on it. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blow. Is there anyone else here in favor, would like to speak in favor of the rezoning? Is there anyone here that would like to speak in opposition to? Seeing none, we'll move back to 210923, the text resolution amendment. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of the resolution, the text resolution amendment? Is there anyone here in opposition to? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and move back into regular session. Ms. Charles, our planning director, if you'll come forward, please. I'm sure you can answer all of our questions.
I hope so. Yes, sir.
I'm sure you can.
Our first property that you heard this evening is located on Patton May Road. The request is to rezone to A1, and that is to allow the placement of a single-wide mobile home on the property, as you heard. There has been no opposition received to this request, and the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval. Our second request, located along Bob Ford Road, as you heard again, the request is to rezone to R1A and would allow for the construction of a single-family subdivision development. Opposition from citizens during the Planning Commission public hearing portion of the meeting was received, much like it was this evening. However, after deliberation, the Commission did vote to unanimously recommend approval of the request. Our third rezoning item tonight is located within Jonesboro's planning boundary at 604 Old State Route 34. The request to rezone to R1 is to accommodate the construction of a single-family residence on the property, and the Jonesboro Planning Commission considered the item, and it was unanimously recommended for approval. Lastly tonight, our text amendment item that's before you is a little different from our rezonings, but it is to keep the county in compliance with state legislation, and that is specifically pertaining to Public Chapter 332, which states that a local government shall not prohibit any construction materials that are approved by a national building code or the state fire marshal. And our corridor overlay zoning district, which is applicable to properties fronting along Boones Creek Road, that district prohibits corrugated metal siding, vinyl siding, and unpainted concrete block when it's visible from the roadway. So the text is recommended to be updated accordingly per the stipulations noted in that public chapter. May I answer any questions? Yes, sir.
Concerning Mr. Tindall's concerns about the information concerning the schools, EMS, traffic, any comments you wish to make?
Yes, sir. I have not heard any comments back to answer the school question, other than just in general. I'm sorry, I'll defer.
Yes, Mr. Malone, if you're going to add something to it.
Question, and I appreciate Mr. Tindall bringing it up again tonight. I have traded some emails with Ms. Moore at the school administration about the letter, and we haven't gotten it yet. I have passed along that request. But Mr. Boyd is here tonight. I don't know if he's prepared or would want to speak to the school issue. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I think I had mentioned in perhaps one of the budget meetings about the letter referencing whether or not the plan development, the 169 units, obviously those are going to be families with school-aged children. If the system was prepared and able to basically handle those additional students. We might negate the need for a letter if you were able to address that demand.
I prefer to be more precise and give you that.
Sure. Then we'll just follow up on the letter as I had planned, Mr. Tindall. I understand it
it may be after the fact, but based on my knowledge of the system, while it could potentially require rezoning, I think the system's able to handle those added students. But we'll follow up with the letter, and I'll get that to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Carriger, does that answer your question on the
No,
school?
I also asked about EMS and traffic.
And just to kind of generally follow up to those questions, the density that they're proposing, the plan that they're proposing, that number of lots can be built under the current zoning district that's there today. So this development, this impact with traffic, number of students, that could all be developed today. The lots would look a little different, but you could still see those exact same numbers under the current zoning. Specifically to traffic, the petitioner did reference conversations with Mr. Deakins. Our office has had those conversations as well. And as that property, when that property does develop, improvements will be required to Bob Ford Road to be able to accommodate two-way vehicle traffic on a daily basis. So whoever, whenever that property develops, will be responsible for making those improvements to Bob Ford Road. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jones?
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate so much the citizens that came forward today, and also there were more citizens that came forward in the Planning Commission meeting. It's always good to see citizens getting engaged in what's going on around them. And I've also really appreciated the developer really listening and it sounds like making some changes in the plan responsively to those concerns. It seems to me like this is a rezone that really is, it doesn't change the number of homes that can go on the property or the demand on the roads or schools or emergency vehicles. And so for me at least, I feel like I will vote in favor of the rezone. It seems like an appropriate designation within the planned use for the property. What I'm concerned about is the plans, and not the developer's plans, but our county's plans for our county. This particular property is hooked up with water and sewer. It was initially planned for being annexed with the city. It's within the urban growth boundary. But our urban growth boundary plans are just about expired. They were designed in 2000, and they're supposed to be a 20-year plan. So we're about a year expired on our urban growth boundary plan. And in talking with Ms. Charles a bit, our comprehensive plan for the whole county could use an updating and really needs a relook. I would love for citizens who come to our Regional Planning Commission and have a concern about how property around them is being developed, not to hear, well, that's just the way it goes, progress, we're marching on, but it's okay. We have a plan to preserve the integrity of the beauty of our rural parts of our county. And even though in this case, we're going to rezone, we're going to move forward, we're going to do whatever, we have lots of other places where we've made sure to protect and preserve. And I know that there was a comment made by one resident that we're losing something like 400 acres of farmland a year with all of this development. I know if you drive out to Gray Fossil State, you'll see farms for sale left and right. And if we don't get a little more assertive as a county about looking at our comprehensive plan and our urban growth boundary plan, I think we'll just be here month after month saying, you know, it fits with the plan, which is what we're saying tonight. And I appreciate all you all do to make sure that things do fit with the plan. I would like all of us to be more proactive about looking at the plan. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Tester?
I just wanted to confirm the group that's wanting to develop the one that we're talking about here does not currently own the property, is that right? They're wanting to buy it.
In contract to purchase, yes, sir.
Okay.
Commissioner Harris?
I just want to say I appreciate the planning department. I think they do a fine job. And I hear a lot of very good talk about them. I think we need to be as friendly as possible to developers. We have to grow. If we don't keep growing, you know the mess we're going to be in. We've seen that every year with our taxes. And I appreciate them working with these developers, and I appreciate the developers wanting to take a stand and develop more property in our county. And I just want to say thank you, because I deal with other places, and I'll tell you, I don't hear the same positive remarks from places even inside our own county than I do from you all. So I just want to say thank you for the job you do.
Thank you.
We want to be friendly. We want to work with them. We want to be known. I think personally, my opinion, I hope that we're known in Washington County as being the most friendly, developer friendly. I know we got rules we got to go by, but we need to work with people, and I appreciate that.
Commissioner Jones?
Actually, just want to follow up and say, agree 100%, but also there are lots of creative ways to grow and build more houses and do what we need to do to accommodate people without necessarily expanding the way we are. A question, though, the corridor that we're voting on for the text changes, is that just the Boones Creek corridor specifically?
Yes, ma'am, that's the only corridor that overlay district would apply to in the county. Yes.
Okay. That's
Yes,
good. Thank you.
of course.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Carey?
One final comment, and that is, and I'm sure the planning department is going to do this, and I think we as county commissioners need to do this, and that is, when developers promise people they're going to do something, we need to make sure they do it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Just one question for me, Angie.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything that spurred this text change on the Boones Creek corridor development?
Yes, sir. It was state legislation, the public chapter that was brought in this year, after the close of this year, went into
Okay.
effect September 1st.
All right. All right. Any further questions for Director Charles? Commissioner Tester?
Just one more,
Yes,
sorry.
sir.
It's been said that with that second rezoning, that the same number of units could be put on the property without rezoning it?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Can
sir.
you explain that
Yes,
a little bit more?
I
just
sure
so
can.
everybody
Yes, sir. Happy
understands?
to. The A1, which is the current zoning, versus the R1A, which is the zoning that they're looking at and requesting. The differences you see pertain to your setbacks and your minimum lot size square footage. So for instance, the A1 in this instance, where you have water and sewer available, you have a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet. The R1A district that they're requesting, lot size is 12,000 square feet. The A1 allows for single-family residential, but in different levels dependent on utilities, because that's where we typically see more rural. You don't always have, you frequently don't have sewer available, and in some instances, public water is not available in your own well. Additionally, the A1 allows single-wide mobile homes on individual lots, allows restaurants, greenhouses, nurseries, and some other uses. The R1A is strictly low-density residential, single-family residential, so one single-family home on a lot. And allowing that smaller lot size and changing your setbacks just a little bit, for instance, 12-foot side yard setback to a 10-foot, allows you to get a little more flexible with your subdivision design, as you're seeing in this instance where you have the northern portion of the site, that 17 acres, is left as a larger lot, and the other lots are concentrated, to the south above where the sewer line and everything runs along the south of the property. So you're allowed to get the density, just changing it up a little bit, and you can leave some more room for the property to breathe if you want. This is, as we talked about, the comprehensive plan for the county. It was adopted the last time in 2008, so it does expire in 2028. There's a lot of things we will look at when we get into updating that. The new census data obviously is a big piece of that, but it does explain and give provisions for guiding development, both leaving rural, both looking to transition, even to, we do have industrial areas, commercial and industrial in the county. So we do try to work with our developers and at the same time, keep in mind the goals and objectives in that comprehensive plan. So we do look, in this instance, this is what's considered an infill location property. You have public utilities available to it. It's surrounded by other single-family subdivisions already. Electricity's already there. So we're not looking at sprawling our infrastructure. We're taking advantage of something that's already there and filling in a space. So those are all excellent points, and we will continue to look at those, especially as we move forward to update the plan in the next year or two.
So the big difference is the 17 acres on the backside that plan is not to
The
develop.
big difference is your minimum lot size, square footage, and your setbacks. That's really what you're looking at.
So if that 17 acres was also developed under the same zoning it is now, that's.
Correct,
that's
you're going to
the
fill in,
same
you're going
number of
to,
units.
correct, you're going to fill in more of that
But the
space.
request is to rezone the whole thing, including that 17.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Commissioner Malone?
Just, we're bouncing around here, but back to the text amendment, and
Yes, sir.
please, Mr. Charles, correct me if I'm wrong, but the necessity for the text amendment change is the legislation that passed, and this is a piece of legislation I'm not sure was actually a positive, but we need to come in compliance. Thankfully, it only impacts this one overlay district, but if you heard what Ms. Charles said, it actually allows lesser materials to be used within this district. And so I'm sure whenever the guidelines for that overlay district were approved, there was a reasoning and thought behind it, and now what the county commission had sought to, and the planning commission had sought to do in the past is now getting undone. But if those materials were to be used now, would they not still have to come to the planning commission for a variance?
A waiver, yes,
A
sir.
waiver?
Yes, sir.
Of course, we would necessarily have no grounds to not grant a waiver, but at least we could have input about the design or the use of materials, that sort of thing.
That's correct, and taking into consideration the surrounding properties. Yes, sir.
So I'm going to vote in favor on the text amendment, but I wish we did not have to. I think this is one of those items that would have been better left to local government. But no, our state legislature, in their infinite wisdom, and I'm not being critical of our local legislators, but they decided no, that they know better than what we do on a local basis. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Malone. Any further questions? Thank you
Thank you.
very much, Angie, for all the hard work you do.
All right, thank you, sir.
All right, the minutes of the September 7th Washington County Regional Planning Commission are in your packet. Our first resolution to consider for rezoning this evening is number 210901, is a resolution rezoning a parcel of property in the 5th Civil District presently owned by Christopher Lynn Lawson. Do I have a motion? Motion made to approve by Commissioner Harris, second by Commissioner Carragher. Questions or discussion? Question's been called. Madam Clerk, if you'll switch us to the voting screen. Go ahead and cast your vote and lock it in. Madam Clerk, if you'll announce the vote. No, I'm trying to get ahead of myself. There we go. All right, it's 14 yes, 0 no, and the resolution passes with one absent. Next resolution is Resolution 210902, is a resolution rezoning a parcel of property in the 14th Civil District presently owned by the Buckingham Family Trust and James G. Gresham. Do I have a motion? Motion made by Commissioner Davenport, seconded by Commissioner Fitzgerald to approve the resolution. Questions or discussion? Question's been called. Madam Clerk, if you'll switch us to the voting screen. Go ahead and cast your vote and lock it in. (13 yes, 1 no). The resolution passes with one absent. The next resolution is Resolution 210924. It's a resolution rezoning a parcel of property in the 5th Civil District presently owned by Brenda Gale Malone.
I'll make a motion, we approve that.
Motion made by Commissioner Harris to approve, seconded by Commissioner Jones. Discussion or questions? Questions been called. Madam Clerk, if you'll switch us to the voting screen, please. Go ahead and cast your vote and lock it in. Madam Clerk, if you'll announce the vote, 13 yes, 1 no. The resolution passes with 1 absent. Next resolution is Resolution 210923, is a resolution amending the Washington County zoning resolution. It's the Quarter Overlay District. Do we have a motion?
Hey, Greg, I meant to hit yes, I must hit no.
Oh. Well, I've already announced the vote. You're going to have to improve your aim, Commissioner Lyon.
You're right.
I see it. See it.
Pass the main thing.
All right, we got you guys to pass. Yes, that's fine. Resolution 210923. I need a motion and a second. Motion made by Commissioner Wheeler, seconded by Commissioner Fitzgerald to approve the resolution. Discussion or questions? Questions been called. Madam Clerk, if you'll switch to the voting screen, please. Go ahead and cast your vote and mark it in. Madam Clerk, if you announce the vote, 14 yes. The resolution passes with 1 absence. All right, that concludes our zoning portion. We'll move on to special recognitions and proclamations. Mayor?
I know what you're doing.
Oh, Lord.
We have one proclamation tonight. Ms. Heatherly, would you come forward, please? It is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and Ms. Heatherly Sifford is here to listen to this proclamation. Whereas suicide is one of the most disruptive and tragic events a family and a community can experience, with more than 1,100 lives lost in Tennessee each year and an estimated 25 attempted suicides for each suicide death. And whereas suicide is the 9th leading cause of all deaths in Tennessee, the 2nd leading cause of death among youth ages 10 through 14 and adult ages 25 through 34, and the 3rd leading cause for children ages 15 through 24. And whereas more than 3 lives a day are lost to suicide in Tennessee, which means we lose 21 Tennesseans each week, or 97 people per month. And whereas Tennessee veterans, active duty military, and National Guardsmen face a disproportionate risk as compared to the general population, with more dying from suicide than combat. And whereas public awareness of this tragic problem is a key to preventing further suffering and loss of life, and the risk for human self-destruction can be reduced through awareness, education, and treatment, as the highest risk for suicide is among the survivors of those who died by suicide or those who have attempted suicide. And whereas suicide prevention has been declared a state priority by the governor, and the Tennessee legislature has declared teen suicide prevention as a state priority in partnership with the Tennessee Suicide Prevention Network to implement the Tennessee Strategy for Suicide Prevention. And whereas Tennessee is a national leader in the effort to prevent suicide, being one of the first states to develop a suicide prevention and evaluation plan. And whereas the governor of Tennessee has appointed a Suicide Prevention Network Advisory Council to coordinate the implementation of the Tennessee Strategy for Suicide Prevention. And whereas the Tennessee Suicide Prevention Network is a grassroots collaboration of Tennesseans and organizations working to eliminate the stigma of suicide, educate the community about the warning signs of suicide, and ultimately reduce the rate of suicide in our state. And whereas every member of our community should understand that throughout life's struggles, we all need occasional reminder that we are silently fighting our own battles.
And whereas we encourage all Tennesseans to take the time to inquire as to the well-being of their family, friends, and generally convey their appreciation for their existence by any gesture they deem appropriate. A simple phone call, message, handshake, or hug can go a long way towards helping someone realize that suicide is not the answer. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of the County Commissioners of Washington County, Tennessee, and the County Mayor, William J. Grandy, hereby proclaim the month of September 2021 as Suicide Prevention Awareness Month in Washington County, Tennessee, and do urge all citizens to work to prevent suicide and to raise awareness and tolerance around all people affected by this tragedy. Heatherly, thank you for the great work that you do. Would you like to say something?
Yes, thank you to all the commissioners. Mayor Grandy, thank you so much for all of your support over the years. It really means a lot as we continue to move forward in trying to make a difference and decreasing our numbers. I also serve on Governor Lee's Advisory Council out of Nashville and Commissioner Dr. Piercy's Stakeholder Task Force. And we are working very hard to make sure that every county in Tennessee has money to address suicide prevention, because we know we continue to see an increase in numbers in our teenagers, in our middle-aged adult men. We're seeing an increase in our farmers, which is, very much hits home in our rural counties. So thank you all for your support. It means a lot.
Thank you so much. We have a motion to approve the proclamation. Motion made by Commissioner Jones, seconded by Commissioner Carriger. Any questions or discussion? All right. Those in favor of approving the proclamation signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. The proclamation passes. Thank you so much. We appreciate doing this each year and recognizing the great need in our community.
You can't tell, but I'm smiling. It's okay.
It's a smile.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much. All right, our next item is the Washington County Recovery Drug Court. They're here with us this evening to give us a short informational piece about their work going on in the recovery court and all the great things they're doing. Deborah is our new coordinator there, and just wanted to take a few minutes and grab her so that you will have a full awareness of what is happening there in recovery court. Deborah, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you.
You have all the answers.
I wish I did have the answers. I have lots of questions. Thank you for letting us talk with you this evening. Judge Arnold and I appreciate the opportunity to tell you just a little bit about the Washington County Recovery Drug Court. We were established in 2014. Just a little history about drug courts in the United States. The first one was established in 1989 in Florida. Currently, there are over 3,500 types of these courts that are called problem-solving or treatment courts in the United States. The many types of them, they're including DUI courts, veterans courts, homeless courts, juvenile courts, baby courts, of course, mental health courts, and we do have a mental health court also in this county. These type of courts, the problem-solving courts, save taxpayers money by reducing arrest, incarceration, and hospitalizations. Over the time that these type of courts have been in existence, they've saved over 1.5 million people and billions of dollars. The return of $27 for each dollar spent is what the investment in these types of courts gives to the general people. So, what are adult drug courts? They're designed to reduce drug use, relapse, and criminal recidivism among persons that are charged with or convicted with a nonviolent crime. And this comes through risk and needs assessment, judicial interaction, monitoring, supervision, and graduated sanctions. The program is managed by a multidisciplinary team that includes judges, practitioners, defense attorneys, probation, law enforcement, social workers, and the treatment providers that are providing the treatment to the individuals. 30 years of data have shown that these are the 10 elements that make the successfulness of these types of courts. And you can see there's many different things, including the judicial responsibility, the incentives, the sanctions, the therapeutic adjustment, the substance abuse, the monitoring, and the monitoring of alcohol and drug, and the census and the caseloads that are being watched. So how did we obtain our drug court? The process was in 2013, the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services approached the county offering a funding to fund a misdemeanor court. Judge Dawn Arnold agreed to preside as the judge. At that point, Frontier Health was selected as the administrator of the program. There were meetings held for a period of time with probation, law enforcement, treatment providers, and the justice system, and the implementation of the court started in March of 2014. So who's on our team? Of course, we have the judge. I'm the coordinator. We have the representatives from the Public Defender's Office, the District Attorney's Office, the Johnson City Police Department, the Sheriff's Department, the Circuit Court Clerk, the VA, of course, our treatment providers, probation. We have a private attorney. We have ETSU, who does our the law enforcement section of ETSU does our monitoring that for us, and we actually have an addiction advisor that sits on our board. So what's the process if someone wants to be in our court? The attorney or the individual makes a referral. The district attorney then checks to see if that individual is eligible based on their history, if they do have nonviolent crimes, so they would be eligible. The referral is provided to me, the coordinator, and then I conduct a 2 to 3 hour assessment. And this has not only includes mental health, it includes substance abuse, readiness to change, and also trauma that the individual has experienced in their life. I write a report. The report is submitted to our team. We meet at 7:30 on Friday morning, so we get up early. And it takes a lot of time to go over all of the docket. But we discuss, we first of all see, does the person meet the eligibility standards that are established by the National Association of Drug Courts? And we discuss the individual, then we actually bring the individual into the courtroom and interview them and ask them specific questions about why they want to be in our court. We vote, and then if the individual is selected, we set a date to actually sign them into our court. If they're not selected, we provide them other resources where they can also continue to get help, just not in our process. So once they're signed into our court, most of our people, based on the risk assessment, are determined to need inpatient treatment. So we try to, so I put their name in the pot, per se, to get a treatment bed available for them and to find funding until it'll pay for that treatment. Then we actually look, many of our people may be homeless. They may have been living in a tent or a car, and when they're arrested, they don't have anything but the clothes on their back. So many times we have to get them clothing if they go into treatment, some personal items, and then I arrange the transport to get them there. When they're in treatment, I go visit them every week, and if they're local, and see how they're progressing, let them know about the program, and then take a report back to the team every Friday. When it's time for them to get out, it's typically 28 to 30 days. We do discharge planning, and that's when they start looking. We have the housing, and most of our people go into sober living, which is a support system, the Oxford House. So we look at how are we going to assist them with the housing, food. They're going to need a telephone for our program. I'll talk about that in a second. Personal needs, bus tickets, transportation, that type thing. And so then the individual begins the next step of the program, which is called intensive outpatient treatment. So what's an example of what they do in a week? There are 5 phases in our program, and at each phase it kind of graduates down to less restrictive. But in the first and second phases, the individual checks in every morning. They have an app on their phone, and it shows me where they are. I can track them. I know exactly where they're at, and it tells them whether or not they're going to be drug tested that day. Also, They'll be going to their intensive outpatient treatment 2 to 3 times a week. They're going to be going to probation for drug testing 2 or 3 times a week. They'll be going daily to a self-help group like NA or AA or Smart Recovery. They'll be getting individual therapy, case management. They may be required to do community service. They're meeting with me weekly. They're coming to court every Friday, and they have to check in at night, the curfew. They have a 9 o'clock curfew in phase 1 and a 10 o'clock in phase 2. They're checking in on the app, so I can make sure that they're at home where they're supposed to be. In the phases 3 through 5, they continue the daily check-ins. They don't have the night curfew. Their treatment continues, and in those phases, they begin working, or some of them are going to school or finishing their GED, and some of them start community college or start college. So during this time, the individual goals and benchmarks are established. It might be obtaining their driver's license, helping getting custody of their children or rights to actually see their children again, obtaining safe, sober living, obtaining again their high school diploma or college. And in this section also, the individuals start making payments on their court cost, their child support, any restitution, and their other financial obligations. So it teaches them to do the things that they should be doing. After 13 to 19 months, if they complete all the requirements of the program, our individuals graduate the program. And when they graduate, their jail time is, they do not have to serve their jail time if they complete our program. But many people by that time have employment, they have housing, they've reestablished connections with their family, they have a clean, sober lifestyle, and it's a wonderful benefit to them, their family, and the community. So, thank you for letting me tell you about our program.
Deborah, thank you. I know you all do great work, and we appreciate all you do, and just wanted to highlight you just a moment this evening. Commissioner Harris?
I worked as a sheriff for over 23 years, and I'll tell you, I had a young boy that went through your program that worked on my grandfather's farm, and it made a tremendous difference in him. In fact, Judge Arnold was his hero because he said normally he'd always been talked down to by the court system. That's what he always said. But he said with Judge Arnold was his mentor. He was strict on him and rough, but it changed his life, and I think these are the kind of programs we need. You know, this is what we got to have. Jail's not always the answer. And I appreciate Judge Arnold and how that you come on board because it made a difference in him. If you can just change one, you know, that's great, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes.
We appreciate that. It's a wonderful thing to see. It truly is. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deborah. All right, our next item this evening is continue on with our discussion of with Bright Ridge. Mr. Dykes, if you want to come forward to the podium, please.
Good evening. Good to
Good
see you again. And I will quickly let these gentlemen come up because they have some PowerPoint, some what I think is really good information, as you heard from one of the residents this evening, have made significant impact. I can tell you my wife is aware of the significant impact. I've drug her down there in some different hours of the day and night to listen to see how the changes are made. So she would definitely, speaks the same as he does. I do want to follow up on a couple of things, Mr. Malone. The last time we had discussed a little bit on TVA's rate, and I did want to just tell you that we did follow up TVA just to be sure. I know I was passing along the information correctly, but we did follow up as far as this specific rate. TVA does not do a one-off on their rate schedule, and just so you know, those rates are the lowest in the in the valley, but lowest in the southeast region. And even with the margins we make, if we did away with the margins on ours during the daytime, they still would not be operating at a lower rate than they do on the off-peak. So just wanted to be sure I got that information back to you. So in addition to that, I can tell you that you're going to see some PowerPoint slides that show you a lot of information they've done. see some of the things that they have been doing. I hope if you have a chance to go by there and listen, and if you've been by there before, I think you'll see a significant improvement. I will also tell you that some of our board chair has been in discussions with them too, just so they could be sure that the rest of the folks at Bright Ridge were following up with them, and I've had numerous discussions with them. So I think you'll hear some positive things and know also, and they will tell you that, and again, I can't speak for them, but they also will tell you they're not finished with what they're doing. They have additional things that they're going to implement, but I think they will show you some results that have had a significant impact on the area down there. So I will turn it over to Mr. Napier and let him do that PowerPoint.
Thank you, Mr. Dykes. Let me move this around here so I can get my notes. Good evening. Again, my name is Todd Napier. I'm here on behalf of Red Dog Technologies. Also here with me this evening are Ed Medford and Philip Hicks. It's my intention to provide you with an update on the steps that we've taken and progress I believe that we've made since when we were here in September at the previous commission meeting. Where should I point this? Anywhere? To advance the slide. There we go. Okay, so this is the third time that I've had the opportunity to come to speak to you. And the purpose of that was to enter into dialogue, not only with you all, but also with the community to provide you updates on the things that we've done, the progress we've made, but also to answer questions. We've spent and invested over $500,000 dealing with the community's concerns over the sound that's being generated by, or was being generated by, the Red Dog facility. And as you may recall from the September meeting, at that time, we had constructed and fabricated an acoustical louver, a prototype that we had installed on one of the equipment pods, and early indications were that we'd had some successful results from that, and that when we applied that to the rest of the equipment, that should make a significant difference. And since that time, our employees, our fabricator have all put in a lot of time, a lot of overtime hours to get that done, and I'm happy to say that the acoustical louvers have been fabricated. I've got some photos I'm going to show you on all 15 equipment pods. And these pods, you'll see in the photographs, are really designed to absorb sound, but also to direct sound in a downward direction to reduce some of the horizontal travel of some of that sound. We've also begun construction on, and I've got some photos I'll show you here, on a 15-foot acoustical barrier wall. So it blocks sound, but it also absorbs sound. And there's some pads, essentially, or barrier walls that we've purchased and installed. I'll show you that. That work is over halfway done, and we've got some more work to do, particularly on the south side of the site. So in addition to the acoustical louvers, we will be making modifications to the inside of the equipment pods that will provide some internal baffling, which will improve airflow and should result in further noise reduction. And so some of the early sampling that we've been able to take, as well as an independent consultant that Bright Ridge has hired, indicate that we're approaching 50% reduction, in some cases a little bit better, on the level of sound. This is an aerial photograph, as you can well see. It shows the location of the Red Dog site there in the center, as well as four. So we, as I had been mentioning a couple of times, we hired a consulting firm that has international footprint, but expertise in acoustical engineering, which is WSP, in order to measure and record the level of sound at all four of these locations. L1 is, or LT, it stands for long-term. One is a site along Bailey Bridge Road, just south of Lola Humphreys Drive. LT2 is directly north of our facility, and it's there on Lola Humphreys. And then LT3 is a site just a little bit to the southeast of our site, just to west of Shelton Road. So this data was then taken by WSP and used to do two things. One of them was to develop a baseline model, and then it was used and put into an acoustical model that they have. So what you see here is called an Isopleth Contour Map. So when they captured this sound, and I would say, it should go back and say that the sound recordings, the base levels they would capture were back in July. They took that data and incorporated, it's called a Cadna-A sound model. I hadn't heard of that before I got involved in this and learning a lot more about sound. But anyway, it's kind of the standard for model predictions on noise propagation, as well as you can use it to make predictive interpolations based on certain things that you may do. This Cadna-A model incorporates a lot of things. First off, distance from the source. In this case, source would be our facility. Changes in elevation, wind effects, existing structures, walls, barriers, even vegetation such as trees, and whether, hard surface, natural surface. And so this was the model that was developed. It looks a whole lot like a contour map on topo, for those of you familiar with that, back before, we were able to start with any mitigation. Okay, so we asked WSP to say, what if we make, first off, what are some things that we can do that can help mitigate the sound and bring those levels down? And then, what would the resulting effects be? So this is an Isopleth Contour Map of the acoustical louvers, which, again, we had installed on one of the 15 back in September. And it showed the predictive level of those decreases. And then this is an Isopleth Contour Map of a noise barrier wall. And much like acoustical louvers, it showed that the noise barrier wall, both of those could have the most significant impacts on noise reduction. And so because those were the two things that we could get started on that would have the biggest overall impact, we set about working on those items as quickly as possible. And as you add different levels of a wall and acoustical louvers, it has a cumulative effect. So each continues to reduce the previous results. So what you see here, again, I had mentioned back at the previous meeting and in this meeting that we had, at that time, developed a prototype for acoustical louver system. We had it on one pod. And what you see here are some photos are kind of different various stages of installing those. So, we had to go back out and essentially take measurements for all these. Then we had to have a fabricator cut this out, weld it up. Then they had to be bolted up to the face of the equipment pods. And then this brownish kind of yellow material, see here, that's actually the sound absorptive material. As you can see, it's down at an angle. So sound hits that, absorbs in, and what remains there goes down. And also then that opening, kind of the way it lays, it allows for airflow to come in there. And then the white essentially is a vinyl material that protects and keeps the sound absorptive material from, degrading and from the weather. These are some photos actually are taken from inside of our site of the sound wall, the sound barrier wall going up. So you can see the framing had to be constructed around the site, and then these acoustical mats had to be attached, and you can kind of see the different phases of that going up. It's approximately 15 foot tall. And so this week, matter of fact, actually just today, we finished up the north wall. We had previously finished up the west wall, so toward Bailey Bridge was done. We just finished up earlier today on the Lola Humphreys to the north side. And so this week, we will then continue and we'll begin process on the south wall. So we've just begun some of the framing that's necessary to do that, and then we'll start putting all that up. So over the next few weeks, we should have almost all of the site enclosed with the sound barrier wall as well. And then what we're going to do, you might be able to see there's a little, you have to leave a little bit of a gap between the ground and the bottom of the mat there, so that it's just, we're going to go ahead and put stone in around there that will allow water to flow through, but also then provide a little bit more of a sound barrier gap, or sound barrier. So early results have been good, and pleased with that. A couple things. One of them was we purchased a sound meter that was factory calibrated and certified to make sure we were getting good, accurate readings. Cell phones proved to be highly inaccurate for such purposes. And in addition to that, Bright Ridge, as I mentioned, hired an independent consultant out of Johnson City called Industrial Hearing Conservation Services. And so we had baseline readings that we'd taken in July, and there was some baseline readings that were actually collected in June as well. So we had those to compare by. And what we found, obviously, as you would expect, since we were both working with calibrated sound monitors, that our results were very similar. So they went out Tuesday of last week at different times, captured sound, while all of our machines were running. And then we went out on Thursday. I was up here Thursday of last week, and we went around and collected readings at all of these locations. And what we found were that the sound readings that were collected on Tuesday were anywhere from 8 to 10. And then our readings on Thursdays were taken at noon were consistently about 10 decibels lower. And you can see there's an excerpt of that report in the top right corner of this slide. And then in the bottom right corner, there's a chart, and I'd seen this chart, and also they included it in their report from Industrial Hearing Conservation Services that relate basically decibel reductions to perceived level of reduction in sound. So you can see a 3 decibel reduction in measured sound pressure or decibels equates to about a 19% reduction. 9 decibels equates to about a reduction in perceived sound of almost 47. So a rule of thumb is essentially every 10 decibel decrease equates to a 50% reduction in sound. So, that's about where we're at, especially on the north side where we've completed the wall, or had almost completed the wall at that time. So ongoing work, we're continued commitment to the community, to our neighbors, to continue working on this is to finish the south wall, sound barrier. It's to deploy the internal baffling systems. It's a lot more tedious work. You have to go in and cut it out for each individual machine, but that'll be going on over the next several months to get all that done. And what that'll do is it separates the kind of the cold aisle from the hot aisle, which is essentially the intake side of the computer servers from the exhaust side, which allows for better airflow, and that better airflow will allow the computers to work, won't have to work as hard. And so therefore the sound coming from being generated, which is primarily the sound that's being heard, will be less. And then once these internal baffles are installed, we'll then be able to continue evaluating. There's some external fans that help draw air through, the ability to have to run all those or whether or not we might need to swap those out. We've talked a couple of times about EBM Pabst, which is a local company may be using some of their fan technology. So, and then we're going to continue to monitor, the site and make sure that, levels are continuing to stay down. And then I do have some information there that people can, I've given that a couple of times, comments at reddogtn.com can input, and reach us. And I want to thank you again for this opportunity. I know it's certainly not something I've enjoyed. I know it's something that you all haven't enjoyed. I do appreciate, though, and understand the role that you all play and our desire to be good corporate citizens and believe it or not, to be good neighbors. I know that was kind of turned against us last time, but we really did want to do that. And hopefully, some of the results that we've shown show our commitment to dealing with this issue. And again, I just thank you for this opportunity.
All right. Is there any questions, Commissioner Carriger?
Yes, thank you. 2 questions. One,
Yes, sir.
what's your goal? Is your goal to get it down to 0 or? 3, or what's the goal?
Well, there's no way to get it to 0. I mean, obviously, the ambient, when we went back out and tried to take readings when they were off, honestly, the levels were higher when it was off than was on. Now, that's not had anything to do with our machine. There's just ambient noise all the time. It has its own frequency, so can it ever go away where you can't hear it? I don't think that's possible, but we can certainly be very close to where the noise levels were.
Do you have a physical goal of you want the decibels to be this?
I do not. I think we're approaching, we're very quickly approaching ambient levels.
What's ambient?
The noise prior to.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Harris?
Well, I was going to ask a question, but I'm going to make this as a statement off the bat. I think it's ridiculous if you would come in here and say that it's louder down there without the machines going than it is with them going. I think that's a ridiculous statement. But I'll say this, back in the very beginning when we heard about you all coming, and then there was problems and I guess the comment that really, rubbed me raw was, well, from somebody in your company, I don't know if it was you or who, but it was on WJHL, reported that, we build these things out in the middle of nowhere. Well, that's not in the middle of nowhere. It's Bailey Bridge Road, New Salem community. You've got people that live there. And before you all came, it was a peaceful community. You might have heard a cow bellowing, or you might have heard a chicken crowing, but you didn't hear machines running all night long, tormenting the neighborhood. And when I look at this, and I really appreciate the county attorney, what you gave us, because even when I look back at it, when this was approved, it says noise is considered small and will not impact or be heard from adjoining properties. Well, we know that's a bunch of bull. When people come in here just like last month and said they'd rather live in the middle of an area where they was at before and hearing gunshots, that's something that's resonated with me for the past month. I can't imagine how you come in and say I'd rather live somewhere where I heard gunshots or afraid of my child being shot and living in an area like this. So, and the comment you just made that it's louder without it is ridiculous.
Let me clarify that. I said at the time when we took, there was other noises that were actually setting the meter off a little bit more.
Well,
And it's a
you might
true
have come as a
statement.
combine running right beside of it, but I very beg to differ with you. And I would say to this whole commission, wholeheartedly, I appreciate, I've had so many of you all that stood up and supported this neighborhood and area. I know many of you have been down there and listened and heard, and I can't thank you enough, because if it was in your district, I'd be there for you, because I sure wasn't one in front of my house. And I know none of you all will either, so I don't know what we can do, but I think the county attorney has a remedy, and if we have to go this route, I think we should, but that's my opinion.
Commissioner Davenport?
Yeah, I think this comes down to what we were talking about earlier when we was in planning and zoning. And you said it's our responsibility to make sure people comply to what we pass in planning and zoning, and then what they come here. I completely agree with that. So I think we need to get down to the root cause here, and the root cause is, to solve this problem, is not to mitigate the noise. I think it is to look at what we passed. This is not what we passed. When I look at that resolution, this doesn't look like, sound like, this is nothing to what I voted yes for. So when we look at that resolution, that's what I think. So I guess I would look at our attorney and see, I think we could send a letter requesting for this to be shut down. I think we need to look at our planning and zoning and see, is this out of compliance? To me, it's out of compliance of what we passed. So therefore, we have to go with Bright Ridge, which is the property owner still, and say you're not in compliance to what our zoning regulations are. That's what I see here.
Make a motion. I'll second it if you will.
Commissioner Huffine?
Yeah, I think one thing we discussed early on was a lack of communication. And you say you've made a lot of efforts to improve communication. Since you have taken these steps, put the walls up, the acoustic louvers, I'm confident you've gone around and surveyed the neighbors to get their feedback. Can you share that feedback with us?
I have not individually spoken to all the neighbors. We've had some conversations, different people from our community, and what we've heard is that it's much lower.
Surprising.
Yeah.
I was over there yesterday afternoon, and my unprofessional ear could tell very little difference from what I had heard previously. Took time to talk to a couple of the residents and, asked them the same thing. They didn't think the problem had been resolved. And these are some people that are probably most directly impacted by it. That's how close they are.
Commissioner Wheeler, did you have your hand up, or?
No, but I would like to make a comment. I'll speak anytime I'm called on.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if there are people here in the audience tonight that are impacted by this, I would like to ask that the commission consider letting them come forward and speak. They didn't have the benefit of hearing this presentation before citizens' comments, but I would ask that we let them speak if they would like to do that.
Commissioner Malone?
Yeah, I agree. I see some of the residents, some of the neighbors sitting back there and would like to hear from at least a couple of them. But before we do that, because this may be meaningful, you referenced, Mr. Neighbor, you referenced the testing.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point you referenced testing around noon during the day, I think. I'm just curious about when the testing has occurred, because it seems as if I've heard from residents that it's worse in the evening as opposed to noon.
We took our readings last Thursday at noon. If I can get this to go backwards.
50% is 50%.
There we go.
Well, you're saying if it's
So these
50% at
readings-
noon, it's going to be 50%.
the readings that were
I don't
taken-
know, maybe, because it runs at different paces during the day. I mean,
The readings that were taken by industrial here were taken at, I believe, if I can read that correctly, at 10 at night.
Yeah, I can't read.
Well, I know that, yeah, my eyes aren't that good. But so the samples were taken previously at 10, and I think that the other samples were taken at around the same time, between 10 and 11 o'clock at night. And they show a 10, close 8 to 10 dB at one location, like 7 to 8 at the other.
Thank you.
All right, we have a few proposals that's been spoken about allowing a few of the residents to speak. I know Commissioner Davenport had referenced the attorney. I didn't know if we was wanting to hear from the attorney now, or if there was questions for the attorney.
Yeah, I would like just to clarify what I understand to clarify from what I understand of what action can we take.
Allison, could you advise us of those actions?
The zoning ordinance includes, and I'm going to put it in front of me so that I don't paraphrase it, and I would also call on the planning director, who I know is here if I've overstated it, but the enforcement provision in the Washington County zoning ordinance does empower the county or any other appropriate authority or any adjacent or neighboring property owner who would be damaged by a violation in the zoning resolution to have a remedy, which would be to institute an action for an injunction, and that just means to stop something through the legal process, or seek some sort of reversal or appropriate action in a proceeding, which refers to legal remedies, to prevent the use that is in violation. And so, in short, your question as a commission to me was whether or not it could be shut down. And the recommendation that I would suggest is just starting with correspondence, that ability to shut down a property's use that is in violation would be supported by the zoning resolution as it's written. And specifically, it is that it's not a permitted use under the zoning resolution because it is not a public utility.
All right. Any further questions for Ms. Wilkinson? Commissioner Wheeler?
Ms. Wilkinson, have you had any contact with Bright Ridge's attorney about this yet and what they're doing to?
I have not, but in fairness, I do want to say that there was another lawyer representing Red Dog who did give me some information at one point. I wanted to be mindful that I've shared with you the way Red Dog describes its facility and its operation. So no, I have not spoken to any counsel for Bright Ridge on this.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jones?
And just a point of clarification, this issue that Ms. Wilkinson is talking about is that Red Dog is violating the zoning resolution for this space regardless of the noise. So it's a separate issue altogether that we ought to be dealing with. I mean, I'm certainly curious to hear residents' impressions, but if indeed this business is in violation of what that property was zoned for by our action, then in fairness to you, we should be working that out, because I would hate to see you investing more time and energy into louvers and mitigation of sound if in fact due to causes not, related to the sound at all, we really can't support a business there. It's not functioning in a way that that zone allows. I don't know. It sounds like you were kind of alluding to some process that we need to follow to kind of get to the bottom of that side of things. I'm not sure what that process is. Maybe, Ms. Wilkinson, what needs to happen to follow through on your advice to us here today on this issue?
Well, and specifically, the memorandum was in response to the request of asking if there was a legal remedy. So it was focused on that point. I think that the county has a professional planning director who is empowered to send the correspondence, or it could come from the county attorney as you see fit. It could come from either the department or from the legal department. So, but that would be a request which specifically that it's not a permitted use, and then of course if there was anything else that the planning director identified that was not in compliance with respect to any other requirement of a facility operating with any type of permit, she may wish to add that. So I would certainly recommend that I work with the planning director to ensure that it's handled in the ordinary course to support their work.
Commissioner Harris?
I guess I'm listening to what the attorney says, and again, I appreciate all the work she's put into this, but is something along the lines of what Commissioner Davenport recommended, do you feel like that would be a proper type motion to move forward on this?
It's my legal opinion that the zoning ordinance supports correspondence advising a facility operator who's not in compliance with the zoning ordinance. And it'd be my recommendation that that be done in conjunction with the planning director.
Commissioner Wheeler?
So essentially, that would just be a demand letter with the deadline to be in compliance by?
Yes, sir, but just to be clear, the compliance issue is to be a public utility.
I understand.
Okay, very good. I wanted to be sure that was clear to you. And so absolutely, it would be a demand letter that it be shut down for that reason and anything else that the planning director may have that she's identified from her files that are separate from this particular question of whether or not it's a permitted use under the zoning ordinance. I think in fairness that everything be included.
If we went that route, I assume it would be reasonable for us to set a deadline and authorize further action beyond that.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Williams?
I just want to say, in reading the rezoning request, I agree with Kent Harris's original comment that he would not have voted on it had he thought this was going to happen. And when you read the paragraph here, it does not describe what you all put in. I can't believe you can stand there and think that you followed the request that either Bright Ridge or you put before us. That's just my feeling.
I think since we're moving into an issue really with Bright Ridge at this point, Mr. Napier, if you would, I don't know if we need Mr. Napier up here at the podium right now. Is there, are we in agreement with that, or? Thank you, Mr. Napier.
Thank you.
All right. Would we like to hear from some residents to see if the conditions have improved? Commissioner Wheeler?
Sometimes, I'd still like to hear from them. I totally agree. It's a separate issue, and I don't mind if we deal with that issue before we do that, but I still would like to, we wouldn't be here without their work that they put in. So I'd like to hear from them, but if we want to wait till after we've dealt with the zoning issue, that's fine with me too, but either way you all want to do that. I also think we might, that really wasn't addressed, but we may want to ask the question about what Bright Ridge is doing to come to compliance. If anything, we didn't hear really any of that.
Commissioner Carriger?
This is a question for the county attorney. Sounds like we may be getting into a legal area. Do we need to be careful what we say on the record? Do we just need to shut up and take action, I guess is what I'm asking.
I think that everything that you said is consistent with, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. I was going to say that I think you've been very thoughtful in what you said, and I would not, at all admonish you from speaking. I think I've given an opinion that you requested. That's public information, responsive to months of information being put forward here. So I think you can speak freely. I'm sure that you'll be mindful of what you say. So I can't imagine anything you would say that I wouldn't want to hear, and I'm sure the public feels the same way. This is not a litigation matter. At this time, this is the Washington County zoning ordinance, and you've asked if there were remedies under that zoning ordinance. That's a document that's publicly available on the county's website, which I've cited to you, quoted to you. And so you're fine, Commissioner Carriger.
Thank you. It sounds like to me, we just need to enforce what the zoning law is. I don't know if that requires a vote from the county commission. We approve the zoning, and, we expect it to be enforced and carried out. Mr. Chairman?
Oh, Commissioner Wheeler?
Ms. Williams, would we have to authorize litigation, though?
This commission would authorize litigation, however, the zoning ordinance does include that remedy, specifically authorizing the planning director to take that action that I described, that's quoted in your memo.
So you don't think we need to act on this?
I think for communication to be issued, I think that that's something that the zoning ordinance authorizes the planning director to do in the ordinary course of business. That's within the capacity of her role. I don't hear you asking to initiate a lawsuit. I hear you saying that you would like to have the zoning ordinance enforced, and that passage that I quoted to you includes those remedies of legal mandamus, injunction, et cetera. So I think that a demand made to an applicant who was not in conformance with the zoning ordinance, that is something that the planning director could issue as part of her responsibilities.
I understand on the letter,
Yes, sir.
but given how long this has gone on, given that this is a matter of just shutting down, I would not envision her having to come back a full month from now to get approval. If they refuse to shut down, having to wait a month. If we want to do this, I think we ought to go ahead and give her the authority to take action. That would require us to take some action.
And I don't disagree with that at all. I think that would be the most prudent course if this commission is of the mind that if the zoning ordinance was not followed, that it would authorize litigation. I would say that that's the prudent thing to do in conjunction with this demand letter. It certainly wouldn't hurt to be the most efficient course.
Commissioner Malone?
I believe our attorney referenced communication with Red Dog's legal counsel. Is that correct? If so, I'm just curious the nature of that conversation, if you can share.
I don't mind sharing it all. It would be a public information that a record request was made to the county attorney's office. We are the coordinator of public records, and they were required to do the same thing any citizen would do with a records request. But as part of that, they did extend professional courtesy, which I very much appreciate, which was to provide me with a copy of a pleading that had been filed. And so that's really been the only communication and discussion, in passing of these are the documents that have been provided, but there's been no discussion about anything going on out there. That's not our role. I did not give them a copy of this memo, for example, neither to Counsel for Bright Ridge nor Red Dog. Neither of them were advised.
Commissioner Jones?
A question from Ms. Wilkinson. So if we go ahead and make a motion that passes to have Ms. Charles communicate with Red Dog, and just using the term shut them down, like what you're saying, are there many different ways things can go from there, or is that a sort of terminal, like forever kind of situation? It sounds to me like there's still some things to work out, and I would just assume, as Commissioner Carragher said, follow the zoning, rules, and be consistent in our implementation of that. And then I would just be curious to know what happens after that.
To answer your question, Commissioner Jones, I wouldn't want to speculate about what opportunities Red Dog may or may not have with respect to its business. I don't know anything about its business. The applicant was Bright Ridge. As a result of the complaints concerning the noise, the commission was asking questions about what was the facility, and through that information, the county became aware that it was a third party, Red Dog, that was operating the facility there and not Bright Ridge. And so I don't know what they could or couldn't do. So I would suggest following the zoning ordinance as written and just seeing what information is available. Perhaps Red Dog or Bright Ridge do have information they'd like to share upon communicating with the planning director. But I wouldn't want to guess what that is.
Commissioner Davenport?
Yes, great conversation. I believe after looking at the resolution, I don't think I don't think that property is being used for what we zoned it for. So therefore, I'd like to make a motion that our attorney work with our planning and zoning and send a letter requesting that they comply to the zoning of that property.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Huffine.
Do we want to include a date by which zoning compliance needs to occur?
I think that would be great. I would ask our planning and zoning, what kind of timeline do we think? What kind of timeline do she thinks she needs?
Oh, could we just make it that she would report back to us next month?
Report.
As into the progress of it? Her or the attorney?
Take all action necessary as soon as possible and report back to us at the next meeting.
I'd like for her to do everything in her authority that she can do legally to bring them into compliance as quickly as possible.
Commissioner Carriger?
If I understood our attorney right, there's no way for them to get into compliance.
I think that is correct, Commissioner. That's what I understand as well.
And I think there shouldn't be a person here at this meeting tonight that doesn't know where this is going. Again, I just reiterate, I think we let the rules, the laws we've got in place, our zoning folks, our attorney, to go ahead and do what they're authorized to do and follow the policies that we have approved as a county commission.
All right, we have a motion and second.
Mr. Chairman, can I just get clarification? I've heard two different commissioners ask information, and I want to be very clear. Is there an addition to that about litigation in the event? Because I wouldn't want to reference something in a letter that overstates what the county has authorized.
Madam Clerk, could you read back the motion that you have right now that we're going to consider? I tell you what, Commissioner Davenport,
Excuse me.
let's help us, Allison, cover that.
Yes, the motion.
Go ahead with the motion that you have right now.
What I've heard from Commissioner
Okay, thank you.
Davenport was a letter requesting that the property be brought into compliance with the zoning ordinance, and that the planning director take all action within that authority. And that, I think, because it does reference litigation, would be inclusive of that, but you've had discussion on the floor that a prudent approach would be to expressly state that if that was the will of the county. So if you were in fact going to say including litigation as authorizing litigation, I would want to hear that expressly. That's my question.
Including litigation.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Huffine, do you still continue with your second?
Yes, I do.
All right, on that motion, we'll open the floor up for further discussion or questions. Questions been called? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The motion passes. All right. Any additional information you need, Allison, for that? No, sir. Okay. All right. All right. All right. We have one quick item here. In the next item is our minutes. We do have several sets of minutes to consider. Page 38, 39, and 40. One minutes that we will need some correction on one set of minutes on August the 23rd. There's a bit of confusion on the heading. Allison, will we need to take these separately? On the minutes, can we approve them all together, each one in turn? Okay, all right. Let's go ahead and consider the first one, the July 21, 2021 emergency meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. That's on page 38. We have a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Wheeler, seconded by Commissioner Carragher. Discussion or questions?
Call for the question.
Seeing none, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Commissioner Tester abstains. And the motion passes. Next, receive and consider the minutes from the July 26, 2021 special session of the Board of Commissioners on page 39. Do we have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Tester to approve. Seconded by Commissioner Kate. Discussion or questions?
Call for the question.
Question's been called. All in favor of the motion to approve signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The motion passes. This one is the one that has a bit of correction to it. On page 41, you'll see under election appointments and confirmations. That's Resolution 210802. Under that, it says a resolution authorizing Washington County to apply for Select Tennessee Site Development Grant. That should be appointing a member of the Ag Committee. That's what that should say. Isn't that right, Commissioner? Commissioner Tester brought that to my attention. Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve that with that correction.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Carragher. Discussion or questions other than the one that's been amended?
Call for the question.
Seeing none, the question's been called. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. And the motion passes. Next item is resolution under election appointments and confirmations. The resolution 210903 is a resolution confirming the county mayor's appointment to the Washington County Regional Planning Commission on page 51. Do we have a motion? Motion made by Commissioner Fitzgerald to approve the resolution, seconded by Commissioner Kate. Question, Commissioner Jones?
Does this appointment go through a committee? Is there do we look at the community applications for this one, or is this just a mayoral appointment?
This is a mayoral appointment.
Okay. And is there another seat on that same planning commission? I saw that there was a seat advertised where it said applications are due September 30th. It was to replace Gary McAllister.
Ms. Charles, can you help me on that one?
This is our last vacancy on this board. We do have an opening on the
Board of Zoning Appeals, and that is a commission appointment.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Call the question.
Question's been called. Madam Clerk, if you'll switch us to the voting screen. Go ahead and cast your vote and lock it in. Madam Clerk, if you'll announce the vote, 14 yes, 1 absent, and the resolution passes. The next resolution is resolution number 210925. It's a resolution appointing Lewis Haney as Director of the Solid Waste Department for Washington County. Do I have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Davenport to approve the resolution, seconded by Commissioner Ford. Question?
Call for the question.
Question's been called. Madam Clerk, if you'll switch us to the voting screen, please. Go ahead and cast your vote and lock it in. Madam Clerk, if you'll announce the vote, 14 yes, 1 absent, and the resolution passes. Let's go ahead and take a 10-minute recess. I'm seeing some pretty mean looks my way.